So I want you to picture the city of Turin. It's August 1854, and a cholera epidemic is just absolutely tearing through the states.
Which, I mean, back then, that was essentially a death sentence.
Oh, totally. People are terrified. The medical community is, well, they're completely helpless, right? And the whole social fabric of the city is just unraveling.
Yeah, it's total chaos.
Exactly. But amid all this chaos, there's this one man. And he stands in front of a group of highly vulnerable, impoverished orphans, and he basically promises them a literal spiritual force field against the plague.
A force field. I love that term.
Right. It's wild. So today we're doing a deep dive into a very specific stack of historical records. We're talking documents, letters, eyewitness accounts, and they all center around events that happened on or around August 10th, spread across multiple years in the 19th century.
And all of them point back to this one central figure, Don Bosco.
Yes, Don Bosco. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically deconstruct a leader who operated at this almost impossible intersection. We really want to unpack how someone could command this sophisticated public relations machine, manage a sprawling network of orphans, and, simultaneously be credited by thousands of people with miraculous healings.
It really is a fascinating study in organizational contradictions. I mean, usually history gives us either the solitary mystic on a mountaintop, right?
Yeah.
Or you get the ruthless institutional administrator in a boardroom.
Yeah, exactly. They don't usually mix.
No, they don't. So finding someone who occupies both spaces, who actually leverages supernatural belief to fuel this massive bureaucratic machine, it requires us to sort of look past the mythology and analyze the actual mechanics of his leadership.
Right, and to understand those mechanics, I think we have to start with the mythology itself. So let's go back to that 1854 cholera outbreak. The newspaper at the time, La Ramonia, was publishing these just devastating daily reports on the death toll.
The panic must have been completely overwhelming.
Unimaginable. The city was gripped by this invisible terror. And Don Bosco, who is running the oratory, which is this massive youth center and home for vulnerable boys, he makes this staggering claim to his wards on August 5th.
Right, the famous promise.
Yeah. He tells them they will be completely safe from the disease, but under two specific conditions. They have to remain in a state of grace, and they have to wear a medal of the Blessed Virgin.
When you look closely at the psychological state of Turin in 1854, the sheer brilliance of that promise really becomes apparent.
How so?
Well, think about 19th century medicine. They were largely operating on miasma theory, right?
Like the idea that bad air was spreading the sickness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for an impoverished child living in these cramped, dirty quarters, an invisible airborne threat, it just induces complete paralysis.
Yeah.
He had zero agency.
Wow, yeah. There's literally nothing you can do to fight bad air.
Right. So what Don Bosco did was translate an uncontrollable biological terror into a highly specific spiritual equation, one that the boys could actually participate in.
He gave them an action plan.
Precisely.
So the concept of a spiritual force field, it isn't just about faith then, it's about psychological resilience. It's him saying, do these two things and the disease cannot touch you.
It gives them back their agency in a time of total helplessness.
And the crazy thing is, according to the records from the oratory, this reputation for physical and spiritual protection didn't just hold steady, it amplified.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if we look at the source material from a few years later, 1862, around this exact same August timeline, the narrative shifts. It goes from communal protection to targeted miraculous healing.
The incident in Nice.
Yeah, the Nice miracle. So Don Bosco is in Nice, and he is brought to a child who is so severely ill that the attending physicians have entirely abandoned the case.
Which she's saying something. I mean, the medical establishment officially stepping away in 1862, that essentially meant writing the child's obituary.
Completely. But the mother brings her dying boy to the sacristy anyway for Don Bosco's blessing. And the historical account from that day describes the aftermath in this really vivid detail. The child is brought out, and I quote, kicking, eyes sparkling, and very much alive.
It's an incredible image.
Right, but if we are dissecting his leadership here, I have to look at the leverage this creates. I mean, if you are managing a rapidly expanding youth center and you are universally recognized by your followers as this verified miracle worker.
Right, someone who reverses terminal illnesses and blocks plagues.
Exactly. Your authority completely transcends normal administration. You aren't just a manager anymore. It seems like building this mythos preemptively solves, any disciplinary or loyalty issues you might ever face.
That's a great point. Bureaucracy often requires a mythos to survive, honestly. When your followers truly believe you can negotiate with heaven on their behalf, your authority becomes absolute.
Yeah, how could you ever argue with the guy who literally kept the plague away?
Exactly. But crucially, in Don Bosco's case, it wasn't an authority born of fear or coercion, which you see in a lot of other historical cults of personality.
Right, it wasn't a dictatorship.
No, it was an authority born of profound psychological comfort. During moments of extreme existential dread, he was their anchor. A purely competent administrator might earn respect, but a leader who seemingly holds the keys to life and death. That creates an unshakable generational loyalty.
That makes so much sense. But, keeping children alive during a plague and reversing terminal illnesses, that builds the myth. The reality of the morning after a miracle, though, is incredibly gritty.
The logistics of survival.
Exactly. Once the immediate danger passes, you are left with the logistical nightmare of thousands of dependents. You actually have to feed them, clothe them, house them, and educate them, which transitions us directly into the second layer of our historical records, his life as a practical caretaker.
Yeah, we're moving from the ethereal, miraculous stuff to the deeply, deeply bureaucratic.
Right. So, jumping to 1860, the sources show Don Bosco entrenched in the operational trenches. Around the same August date, he is processing the intake of orphans. And this isn't just like a casual, off-the-street operation anymore.
It's institutionalized.
Heavily. We have a record for a boy named Albert Lasso from Aniglia, who actually comes to the oratory with a formal recommendation from the Department of the Interior.
Now, that specific detail, the Department of the Interior, is incredibly revealing about the political landscape of Italy at the time.
Really? How so?
Well, the secular government is essentially outsourcing its social safety net to a religious figure. The state itself recognizes that Don Bosco's infrastructure is far more robust and efficient at handling highly vulnerable wards than their own municipal systems.
Wow. So the government is basically saying, we can't handle this, give him to Don Bosco.
Exactly.
And along with Albert, the intake records show two other boys, Radit and Pensionati, who were both recently orphaned by the loss of their fathers. The sheer volume of this intake is staggering.
It's an immense burden.
It is. And relying on state recommendations doesn't necessarily mean state funding. To keep the lights on, Don Bosco had to navigate this complex web of private philanthropy.
Had to be a fundraiser.
A huge one. And in that exact same year, 1860, our sources highlight this massive public event. Exactly 17 days after the death of Father Joseph Cafasso, the oratory holds a massive, highly publicized tribute.
A very strategic tribute, I would
Oh,
argue.
totally. They drape an entire church in black for a solemn requiem mass, which is led by the orphans. And Father Cafasso, we learned from the records, was this vital benefactor who had just left a massive financial legacy to Don Bosco's institution in his will.
Right, which was a critical injection of capital precisely when the intake records show the oratory bursting at the seams.
Exactly. Now, if I'm looking at this through a modern organizational lens, this public tribute is a masterclass in strategic signaling.
100%.
I mean, yes, obviously they are grieving a mentor, but a church draped in black, filled with hundreds of orphans singing a requiem mass, that is an undeniable demonstration of community gratitude.
It sends a very clear message.
Right, it signals to every other wealthy citizen or local priest in Turin that, hey, this is how your legacy will be honored if you invest in this institution.
Don Bosco intuitively grasped this core principle of philanthropy. Private generosity often requires public recognition to actually scale.
Yeah, people want to be remembered.
Exactly. He was taking the raw, authentic grief of his community and structuring it into a stabilizing mechanism for the institution's future. By elevating Cafasso's legacy so publicly, he was setting a precedent for future donors.
For anyone managing a team, running a business, or, trying to fund a nonprofit today, the psychology here is highly applicable. You don't just ask for resources, you publicly validate your early investors to attract new ones.
It's brilliant networking.
It really is. However, relying on local benefactors leaving you their life savings is fundamentally unsustainable in the long run.
Right, a local economy can only support so many orphans before charity fatigue sets in.
Exactly. Don Bosco had hit a geographic ceiling in Turin. To break through it, he had to invent a way to make people outside of his immediate vicinity care about his mission.
Which necessitates the creation of a distribution channel. He had to figure out how to export the narrative.
And that leads us to August of 1877. We have this recorded conversation between Don Bosco and Father Julius Barbarez regarding a brand new initiative that launched that very month. It was called the Salesian Bulletin.
A huge turning point.
Massive. And Don Bosco is remarkably transparent about its purpose. He explicitly calls the publication the mainstay of all our enterprises. He says it's specifically designed to win public goodwill and financial support for Salesian works.
He is openly acknowledging there that spiritual zeal and local miracles are no longer enough to sustain the operation. He needed a dedicated, recurring media arm.
He started a media company. And, I want to challenge the optics of this for a moment.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the traditional archetype of a 19th century saint, especially someone associated with miraculous healings and extreme asceticism, is someone entirely removed from worldly concerns, right?
The guy praying in the cave.
Exactly. Yet, here is Don Bosco launching the equivalent of a modern corporate newsletter or like a global Kickstarter campaign. Doesn't this aggressive public relations savviness conflict with the otherworldly nature of his spiritual mission?
Well, it's a natural tension to observe from the outside, certainly. But internally, the pragmatism of the Salesian Bulletin was the very engine that allowed the spiritual mission to exist.
So he didn't see it as a compromise?
Not at all. There was no ideological conflict for him because the marketing directly funded the survival of his people. The Bulletin basically bypassed the traditional slow-moving ecclesiastical hierarchies and went directly to the public. He was pioneering a form of 19th century crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing salvation, almost. And the sources show exactly where that crowdsourced capital was going. If we jump 5 years later to 1882, the scale of his operation has officially crossed the Atlantic.
The missionary work.
Yeah. Don Bosco writes a letter to Father Louis Lasagna, who is a missionary deployed to Uruguay, and he offers Lasagna spiritual encouragement to remain steadfast against worldly malice.
A very poetic way to describe a very difficult situation.
Right. And Don Bosco writes about his own readiness to endure crosses, thorns, and persecution, so long as souls could be saved.
Now, the language of crosses and thorns is crucial here, because the reality of 19th century missionary work in South America was brutal. It was physically devastating and incredibly expensive.
I can't even imagine the logistics of getting supplies out there.
Oh, it was a nightmare. The missionaries on the front lines were dealing with extreme deprivation. So, the Salesian Bulletin was the tool that captured the imagination of comfortable European readers, translating their inspiration into the hard currency needed to keep Father Lasagna and his peers from starving.
Wow. So you really cannot separate the mystic from the marketer, because the marketer is funding the mystic's actual physical survival in Uruguay.
Exactly. The PR machine built the boats, basically.
It is a staggering level of macro management. I mean, think about it. He is negotiating with the Italian state, launching global magazines, deploying international missionaries, and crowdfunding through a monthly bulletin.
It's the workload of a modern CEO.
And usually you would expect a leader operating at this altitude to completely abstract himself from individual people. Like, when you are managing thousands, the individual usually just becomes a statistic, right?
Yeah, that is the typical trajectory of institutional growth. The founder becomes insulated by layers and layers of middle management.
Yet, our final slice of August history proves the exact opposite. So we move to 1885. Don Bosco is older, his health is failing, and the sources place him at the Mothy paper mill. He's there desperately seeking relief from the oppressive summer heat.
Which is such a vivid setting.
It really is. I want you to picture the intense sensory reality of this moment. You've got the deafening noise of industrial machinery, the thick dust, the stifling 19th century heat. He is physically exhausted, trying to find a moment of rest in this gritty industrial setting.
It grounds him entirely in the physical limits of the human body. The administrator is finally hitting his physical ceiling.
But even in that exhausting environment, he doesn't stop. He is sitting there writing highly individualized spiritual counseling letters.
Still working.
Still working. From the paper mill, he writes to a Mrs. Carolina Gorey in Rome, who is seeking a temporal grace, basically a specific earthly favor, and Don Bosco responds by promising to offer a holy mass for her and confirms he is starting a novena tailored specifically to her intentions.
Which means he is dedicating 9 days of focused prayer to one individual's earthly problem, despite managing a global empire.
It's wild. And on that exact same day, from that exact same sweltering mill, he writes another letter. This time, it's to Count and Countess Call. He promises them his continued spiritual support and asserts that he will pray for a reserved place in paradise for them both.
A reserved place in paradise.
Yes. The juxtaposition here is staggering to me. He is sweating in a loud, dirty paper factory, enduring the absolute physical discomfort of the real world, yet casually asserting his spiritual authority to distribute VIP seating in heaven to Italian nobility.
The audacity is striking,
Yeah.
honestly, but it reveals the core mechanism of his success. We talk a lot today about scaling businesses or scaling media, but Don Bosco did something much rarer. He scaled his empathy.
Scaled his empathy. I like that.
Yeah, because whether you were Albert Lasso, the vulnerable orphan dumped by the government, or Father Lasagna, the exhausted missionary facing malice in Uruguay, or a wealthy countess in a lavish estate, Don Bosco possessed this magnetic ability to make every single person feel like they were the absolute center of his spiritual attention. When he wrote to you, you weren't a line item in the Salesian Bulletin. You were an individual he was personally negotiating with God for.
That's incredibly powerful. And if we synthesize this entire journey through our August records, the multifaceted legacy of Don Bosco becomes sharply defined.
It really does.
We started with the mystical protector, the man who engineered a psychological force field during the 1854 cholera epidemic and brought a dying boy back to life in a sacristy in Nice.
The myth builder.
Right. And from there, we uncovered the sharp, pragmatic administrator, the guy navigating state bureaucracies and transforming the public mourning of Father Cafasso into a masterclass in donor signaling.
Which naturally evolved into his role as a media visionary, launching the Salesian Bulletin to crowdsource the funds necessary to sustain those grueling, dangerous missionary works across the globe.
Yeah, the PR machine. And ultimately, we end with the tireless counselor in the Mothi paper mill, proving that despite all this international scale, his true power really lay in deeply personalized one-on-one pastoral care.
It is an architectural marvel of leadership, blending the ethereal with the hyper-practical.
Exactly. But, looking at how tightly this entire structure was built around the sheer gravity of one man's personality, it does leave us with a pretty critical question to consider.
Right, because when a sprawling global institution, a massive media arm, and the welfare of thousands of vulnerable children are all sustained by the miraculous aura and unshakable charisma of a single founder, what happens to the orphans and the missionaries the day after that founder is gone?
Yeah.
Can a logistical machine ever truly replace the man who personally guaranteed your force field of grace?
A really profound question about the fragility of legacy, and a great place to leave it for today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the historical records. We encourage you to keep examining the mechanics behind the mythology, because the closer you look at history, the more fascinating the reality becomes. We will see you next time.